Welcome friends of the channel. Now today we're looking at a Guards Red 2+2 coupe rolling on Fuchs wheels with Carrera inscribed on the back, but it is not a 911. Say hello to the 924 Carrera GT. Now, this is a first for this channel because this is the debut on Nineworks TV of a transaxle Porsche. It popped up on the Nineworks marketplace last week and I thought, well, it's worth coming down to here at Philip Raby where it's for sale to take a look in closer detail because the 924 Carrera GT is a special car. It's special for a number of reasons, okay? It's the homologation 924, the car that took the 924 racing. Indeed, it won its class at Le Mans. The second thing is rarity. There's only 400 of these, 75 of which come to the UK. And frankly, Derek Bell owns one. And if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for you and I. So I thought, well, look, why don't we come along today to Philip Raby and have a little look at it up close and see what it's all about. So here we have the 924 Carrera GT. I mentioned it's a transaxle Porsche. Let's all go back to school very quickly. What is transaxle? Well, it's simply an amalgamation of two words, really, transmission and axle. Now, the transaxle concept in a bit more detail is thus, unlike 911s, in 924s and 44s and 28s and 68, the engine is here. In the case of the 924, that is a four-cylinder, water-cooled, turbocharged and intercooled engine. Well, more detail on that later. That sits here. Then here is where the gearbox is mated to it, okay? It's a 5-speed, early 924s, non-turbo and non-GT. They were 4-speed. They all come with a dogleg first gear because it's a race gearbox, basically. So, engine here, gearbox here. As you can imagine, that plays into amazing weight distribution. On the 924, it's 49.51. Now, the 924 itself was introduced in 1975, really as a replacement for Porsche's other mid-engine car at the time, the 914. By 1979, the 924 Turbo came to be, and in 1980, Porsche created this, based on the 924 Turbo, but tweaked, as I said earlier on, with the whole aim of homologation. How does it do it? Well, for starters, you've got a fiberglass wide body kit front and particularly rear, this beautiful rear arch profile. Only available in 3 colours, black, silver, red. The front scoop as well, that is also fiberglass. The reason it's there is because that is feeding air directly into an intercooler, which sits on top of the turbocharged engine. That helps increase power from 168 horsepower of the 924 Turbo to 210 horsepower as here. There was an increase in boost pressure up to 0.7 bar and a higher compression ratio on the engine as well. So 210 horsepower. The suspension is a turbo suspension, albeit lowered, 10mm at the front, 15mm at the rear. The interior, that is taken from the turbo itself, but some general weight saving means the 924 Carrera GT tips the scales at 1,180 kilos. This very clearly is not a 911, and I'm going to try my damned hardest to not compare it to a 911 in any way in this video, except for maybe later on when we talk about prices. But what I do want to say, and then I'll try not to mention 911s anymore, is there are some parts borrowed from Porsche's famous flat six brethren, and that is the Fuchs wheels, front and rear. On the front, 16-inch Fuchs are taken from the 911 SC of the time, and the rear Fuchs are the spec of the 930. There's a couple of 911 bits and pieces underneath, but otherwise this is a standalone car all unto itself. I'm really excited to drive this. The presence of this thing is absolutely awesome. It's really playing into my 1980s Essex vibes, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that's a selling point. Maybe I won't use that. So I'm really looking forward to driving this, but I'm not going to be on my own today. I'm going to be joined by Phil Raby. We've got a lunch date in town very shortly, and we think, well, look, let's take this, explore it in a bit more detail, and bring you along for the ride. Phil and I covered all sorts in the Porsche world, so much so that it's an entire bonus video available to those in the Driven Not Hidden collective. Check it out via the Patreon link below, but for purely 924 Carrera GT content for this video, you've just got me. Completely underestimated how much I would enjoy this, and I am minutes into the drive, and I'm loving it. Porsche was commissioned to build the car on behalf of Audi, but the third party canned the idea, so Porsche basically brought the project back and in-house, although it was agreed that all 924s would be made at the Audi factory in Neckarsulm. I've butchered that, haven't I? But there's no question there's Porsche engineering and Porsche ingenuity sprinkled all over this car. Let's give it some stick into second. Yeah, so look, definitely lag, as you'd expect from a turbo car. And it is quite pronounced actually. And if you don't get it right with this car, it will understeer quite significantly. Quite surprised by that. The suspension is quite stiff, but again, this is a homologation car for a Le Mans racer. And with that in mind, actually, it's not too bad at all. And what I will say is, considering like the age of this car as well, it feels really solid, really well put together. I'm not hearing any kind of clunks or anything from underneath the car that I don't want to hear. The suspension setup, actually, it's kind of typical Porsche recipe of the time. McPherson strut and coil springs at the front, and torsion bar and trailing arms at the rear. Let's just bring it down. Gearbox is super easy to use. When I think of dogleg gearboxes, I always think back to the 901 from the early 911s that, to be honest, are an absolute nightmare. But this G31 from Getrag is really easy to use, actually, really simple. Amazing, thank you. Quite a long throw, but I love the positioning of the shifter. It's quite high. It's the same ratios as that of the 924 Turbo, just it's been strengthened to handle the increased power that's running through the motor. It's a really kind of much more straightforward car to get on with. And the boost from that turbo just provides an extra layer of fun. Yes, I love the way it looks. It's got such road presence to it, particularly in Guards Red, to be honest. This completely backs up my point that Guards Red just looks awesome on any Porsche. I used to say any 911, but not after today. I do love all this switchgear. Makes far more sense than that of a 911. Underneath this like boxy cowling here, you've got three like circular dials giving me my speed, revs, and then fuel and everything else. But then that's kind of copied over the center console here as well, and you've got this other boxy cowling under which lies three gauges: oil pressure, turbo boost, and voltage for your battery, all by video. Oh, I know exactly where we are. We're coming up to an amazing road as well. Oh, this day just gets better. So 210 horsepower, delivered at 6,000 RPM, so it's quite high. 280 newton meters of torque maximum. It's quick, if not rapid, I think it's fair to say. You're never going to win any sprints off the line, but that is completely not what classic motoring is all about. And I love it. I look out the side mirrors and I see those boxy fiberglass rear arches. The view ahead of me, I can see the air vent for the intercooler leading the way. And if I press this button, behold the pop-up headlights. Wrap it up then. How do I feel about the 924 Carrera GT? Well, I have to admit, coming into today's drive, I had a conscious bias that it's a transaxle Porsche and therefore I won't be as interested in it. Very quickly my mind was changed. This is so visually interesting, and driving it has just extended those good vibes, to be honest with you. I really like the steering. I'm not completely sold on the gas pedal. there is quite a lot of delay. You just don't get that like authentic connection between man and machine that a naturally aspirated SC or 911 of the time will give you. I do really like the chassis, super playful. Could probably do with a little bit more of a soundtrack to it if I'm being overly critical, but that's probably the extent of my observations. Everything else is super positive. I've heard and read elsewhere of like the steering wheel being too low and kind of sitting in your lap. Don't overly find that, to be honest, and I'm of average height, I would say. It's completely not a problem. I actually really like the seating position on this. I do feel quite low, as I said. The brakes, you have to really lean on them, but I quite like brakes that are more progressive in nature rather than clinical. So that's just my style of driving. But I mean, yeah, look, again, that and just sticking it in the corners. Awesome. It's predictable, which is what I really like about it. But yeah, the way this car interacts with the road is awesome. In fact, yeah, look, if you keep the revs high at 5k, it'll move. So look, clear benefit to the weight distribution. The other thing is, and I'll just change up so you can hear, the other thing is, I mean, this is massive inside, loads of room in the front, and actually even in the back as well. I feel like a passenger wouldn't be having as much of an ordeal or a tough time as you would in the back of a contemporary SC or 3.2. To be honest, like, yeah, all-round vision, again helped by that lovely rear screen with its curves at either end, just gives so much great vision. And actually, back into the practicality stakes, the boot as well is humongous, feeding into the touring element of what is the Carrera GT. So that is it then. It's actually the end of the day here at Phil Raby, so I need to get this car back inside ASAP. But do you know what? I absolutely love that so much. The 60 grand it's up for, and that's because it's done 60,000 miles. You can get some with less miles and they do cost more as a result. But the 60 grand it's up for kind of puts it in SC 3.2, 993 territory. Whilst all of those cars carry the cachet of being Porsche 911s, none of them are as rare or as special as that. So I'm not saying go out and buy one of these instead, but what I am saying is, for that sort of money, if you want a classic Porsche experience, something that's a bit different and a real talking point, absolutely you should be considering this. A special piece of Porsche history. It's been a genuine joy to drive that today. So thank you to the guys from Phil Raby for allowing us to drive. If you buy it, and you can via the Nineworks Marketplace, please let me borrow this for a couple of days, because I'd love to just spend a bit of time with it to dial into it a little bit more, because it's a fantastic car. Thanks very much for watching this instalment of Nineworks TV, and we'll see you again soon.